ignoring everything under the sun that they're doing if it's in public. I am saying if you have an opportunity to call them out on something privately, or to critique them, or to give them any sort of takaka, better not in front of somebody else, the children, it doesn't matter who else it is, even your spouse, maybe just better to do it quietly and privately. It's always preferred. Next, when you're dealing with a small child, there's some questions that came up, very good questions. The child, you know, the 2-year-old, you keep saying no, and then suddenly after a while she begins to tell you no. No, 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 it's the whole thing. By the way, if you don't have to say no, don't say no. Meaning you can find a way to say no without using the word no. For example, your child wants to have a cookie before dinner. So first off, the most important thing to do is to empathize with your child and to let them know that, well, you know, the cookie does look good, you would love it also. And so instead of saying no, you can't, say, wow, that looks delicious. I'd also like to have a cookie before dinner. In fact, I eat the whole box. But you know what? Mommy just prepared a beautiful meal. Let's go ahead and put the cookie right here. When we're done with the beautiful meal, we'll go ahead and enjoy the cookie. At no point did you ever say no. You empathized, you validated, and the cookie's going to wait. Question?
As a 2-year-old.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I'm not talking about a 2-year-old. With a 2-year-old, there are other ways to say it. For example, no, of course. No, I'm talking about, let's say you've got a 2-year-old, you could see she's doing something that's not proper, whatever. You can say, no, sweetheart, here, do this. Good, here, this is yes. You use simple words, but it doesn't always have to be, no, 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 no. It's just, we get into that habit with everybody, and if you can find another way to help your child to do something different without using the word no, something negative, it's always positive. For example, they give a wrong answer for something. You know, let's say you say, you know, what letter comes after A in the alphabet? And they say Y. You can say, okay, good. Y would be good if I asked you what letter came after X. But if I were to ask you what letter comes after A, X, Y, right? Comes after A, that would be B. Right? In no point did you tell the child it's wrong. To the contrary, they got the right answer, just the wrong question. Okay? And you can tell, you can do this, and they feel great, by the way. They feel great. There's nothing wrong with that. Next thing, questions that came up. Okay. If your child is doing something, you know, once again, I'm referring back to the old personal memory banks here. One of my kids, you probably think, why is Lieberman giving advice on chinuch? Well, he's the problem with his kids. He's davening now, and you know he wants to wear his shirt on top. So you know it's not proper, of course. And Rebbe said, you know, you can't wear your shirt on top. You have to tuck it in. My son said, no. You know what? It's hard for me to daven tucked in, right? So very wise Rebbe says, okay, talk to your father. So this Rebbe actually, I'll mention him by name because actually what he told my son was absolutely brilliant and beautiful. Rabbi Bosch at Yeshiva Tiferet Torah. He said like this. He said, you have to tuck in your shirt for 2 reasons when you're davening. One, it's a proper thing to do. But the other reason, even more important, is there are going to be rules and things that you're not going to agree with as you move forward in life. That doesn't mean you have the right to ignore them. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but pretty much is you may not like it, but that doesn't mean you ignore it. So my son comes home and he says, this is the story. Here's the thing. Don't open up a can of worms, a conversation, something like this if you don't have the time for it. This happened to have been a 45-minute conversation, and I made sure that I had the time to give it as much time as it needed, because this is not something like this, it could be either a small thing, a big thing. You never know where these issues lie, by the way. If it's like an iceberg, there's more beneath it. So you never say, for example, you know, I got a call from Rebbe, and no more with that. And if the Tati, no, okay, and that's it. There's nothing like that. Always hear your child out, by the way, if you know they get a call from somebody, never say so, and get the child's own thoughts on what happened. But at any age, never have a conversation with your child about something if you can't give it the time and attention it deserves. I'm telling you, because here's the thing. They don't care, you gotta own this, they don't care what they end up having to do. They care that they weren't heard. There was a study done with 2,500 convicts, and they interviewed them and asked them how fair they thought the legal system was. Do you know none of them rated the fairness of the legal system based on the sentence that they received? These were indigent people, people who required a public defender to defend them. And they said that the overarching factor in how fair they thought the legal system was had nothing to do with whether or not they got a 6 months probation, 10 years, 20 years, nothing to do with the sentence. It was how long the public defender spent with them. If they felt that they were heard, if they felt that they were validated, if they felt that they were respected, it didn't matter what happened. What you end up doing is almost irrelevant. Your child wants to be heard. Even if you can't do what they ask for, you've got to be able to give them the time and attention to explain it, to make sure they feel heard, empathize, validate. Validate doesn't mean you agree. People always say, how can I validate? They're crazy. I'm not talking about our children, but someone else. How can I? That makes no sense. Validation doesn't mean you agree with what they're saying. It means that I understand, based on your perspective, why you feel the way you do. Your child's toy car breaks. Does it matter? No. Does it matter to your child?
Yes.
Good. Your car door breaks. Does it matter?
Yes.
Really? In the scheme of things, does it matter? Does it matter to you?
Yes.
Of course. What's the difference? It's because it's our car. It's not a toy car. You've got to pay money for it. Well, maybe your child worked hard for this. Maybe your child... It doesn't matter whether or not you agree that they're bothered by it. What matters is that they know that you know that... What matters is that they know that you know that they're in pain. That's what empathy is. Your pain is my pain. And again, that goes to the relationship, that goes to the connection. Okay. We're just sort of continuing in the interest of time. Let me just continue to run down these sort of stomp things, and we'll get some more specific with personality types, and we'll take some other questions. Just along these lines, by the way, when your child comes to you and something's on their mind, something's bothering them, never poo-poo, never minimize, never rationalize, never blame. We try to say it's not a big deal, particularly we deal with anxious kids, we'll get to that. All you do is teach them that, if something's bothering them, they're going to get the latest Pinterest quote as a response on the beauty of suffering. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that, that it's, it's all for the best, gams latov, everything's fine. Say it after they know that you know that they're in pain. You go to someone about something that's bothering you, and before you even get the words out, they'll give you some sort of nice saying or quote. You know what? It's because Hashem loves you. Thank you. Thanks for... True, maybe. But we don't want to hear it until we know that we're validated, until we know this person has heard our pain. So you can tell your child that it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. There aren't monsters, whatever. Until you empathize and validate, forget about it. Next, never ask your child, by the way, a lot of parents do this, never ask your child what's wrong. Avoid that temptation. Never ask your child, why are you looking so sad? Avoid the temptation of, what's the matter? All you're doing, by the way, is psychologically, if you were, by the way, sitting somewhere and someone came in and said, what's wrong? And nothing was wrong, all of a sudden your brain would come up with every connection of things that are wrong. Just in order to accommodate the question. Oh, what's wrong? Well, I don't know, I guess, and you should be in about it. Even if you see your child in a bit of a funk, phrase it in a more neutral way and allow the child to express how they feel without framing it that way. Okay, you don't have to go ahead and much the same way, like a child's eating something. I always do this, rather than say, how is it? Say, this is yummy, isn't it? Or this is fun, isn't it? This is exciting, isn't it? Because then they'll begin to see it that way. And if they don't feel that way, they'll be free to tell you. But sometimes your parents saying, we think we're responsible for bringing our child out of every day. What's the matter? Why aren't you smiling? Where did I fail as a mother that you're not smiling 24/7? It's okay. It's okay. Just, by the way, if I had one prescription pad with one thing to fill on it to give out to everyone, it would just be chill. just chill.
What if they're clearly upset?
Great. You see, perfect. You see your child's clearly upset. You sit down next to your child. Some children are by definition more communicative, right? We call them boys. And actually, no, we call them girls, right? Yeah. I was thinking if you're awake. By the way, I picked up my son from school, and I said, "How was your day?" "Fine." He has a cast on his arm. I said, "It would have been a better day if you didn't break your arm." He said, "No, it's a sprain." Pick up my daughter. I get like a play-by-play from every minute I dropped her off to the entire thing. Some kids are more chatty. That's okay. Some less so. Sit down next to your child and say, is there anything on your mind? Right? Your child may not want to talk about it. That's okay. I was just telling someone this the other day. I said, your child is entitled to be we're human beings, even when they're little. The human beings, they can be in a mood, they can do whatever. You don't have to You don't have to rescue your child from every negative mood, because what happens when that becomes a reflex and they get married? Right? Suddenly they're in a foul mood and they expect their spouse, rescue me from my mood. No. It's okay for you to be there, to empathize, let the child know you're there. You don't have to bring them out. Allow your child the opportunity to talk. If they want to, great. If not, you can let them know. When you're ready to talk, mommy's right here. Maybe something just happened, they don't want to talk about it. It's okay. Only the end of the world is the end of the world.
Question, what if the kid's already crying? You can't say, what's the matter? And what should you say to them?
No, well, look, if they're already crying, well, then, clearly, I guess, you could, I'm not talking about never frame it negatively. I'm saying very often it's a parent's reflex, child comes home and you sort of see a child in a park movie, say, what's wrong? What happened? And suddenly you're already, some people, not you, already framing it in a very negative way. If you see your child crying, you can say, sweetheart, what's the matter? What happened? That's perfectly okay. I'm just talking about some parents, we project our own stuff very often onto our child, and I just see it unfolds in an unproductive conversation with a lot of negativity unnecessarily. Okay, let me just go ahead and move on. When you're dealing with a child who is a little bit on the sensitive side, maybe you call it oppositional, defiant, whatever you want to call it, if they're not really feeling, you're the kind of child who is, will cry very easily, get upset very easily, and so on. This kind of child, you can do your best not to yell at, certainly never hit, and when you have to put them in timeout, you've got to go with them. The reason is because with them, I know, not much of a timeout for you, but the problem is this: if you have a child that is super duper sensitive, they're not really feeling the love. Any signal that they're unwanted will be viewed as a rejection. Meaning that when you say, you know what, no matter how you frame it, if they're being sent away, it's you don't love me. Moreover, I'm not lovable, and you hate me. No matter how much you try to convince them of otherwise, so you got to put them in timeout, and you go with the child, and it doesn't. Here's the thing. Just because you're putting your child in timeout doesn't mean you have to be angry, doesn't mean you have to have an angry face, doesn't mean you can't do it even besimcha. There is nothing wrong with a child who acts out, which is the job of every child who's 1 to 5, who does something you don't want. Say, sweetheart, this is not what mommy said. Big hug, I love you, you're such a good boy, such a good girl, but right now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to sit over here for 30 seconds. Child has no idea what 30 seconds is. Sit here, but she knows she's not going to like it. She's taking away from what you want to do. That's okay. Doesn't have to be like, I told you 4 times already. Now go sit over there. I'm going to be here. The child's crying. All of a sudden, you just created a firestorm. The only objective in disciplining a child of this age is simply to get them to realize the behavior was wrong. It has to be age appropriate, meaning it has to be something that is small, right now, and understandable. It has to have some sort of relation.
What happens if they don't get the punch and like go in the corner and they're like, oh, fun, time with mom?
Right, that's okay. So you just have to up the ante a little bit. Again, I'm talking about super sensitive kids. For some kids, you can send to the corner just fine. Other kids, it's you're sending me to Siberia. So
What happens if they don't, it doesn't do anything?
if it doesn't do anything, fine. Then you have to either send them, if they're not super sensitive, send them by themselves, make it a little bit longer, make them, you just up the ante a little bit where it's that much less fun than what they were doing. It doesn't have to be a bed of nails, okay? Okay, and by the way, when you have a child that puts on that air of like, they're not bothered, don't always buy into the fact that they say it, yeah, little. Well, I know. You see a person has emotion. I don't care. Fine. I'll stand in this corner the entire time. You want me to come out? Nope. I'm still going to stand in the corner. Right? Okay. You know what? All that tells you, by the way, is the child is sensitive, but they are being cool. And what is cool? Cool is they're independent. They are not going to need you. They're going to show you that you are not going to affect them and you're not in charge, meaning that they're going to defy you when they have to come out. They're still going to stay in the corner. Not because they want to stay in the corner, but they want to prove that you didn't cause them any pain. So, first off, don't always trust the fact that they say that they're not bothered by it. And secondly, up the ante just a smidgen. Yes? Is that okay? Make sense? Okay, yes.
How about separating the child from the behavior? I always told my children that I love them unconditionally. I may not always like what they do or say, but I love them unconditionally.
Yeah, sure, of course, right. We always want to separate the child from behavior. It's never you're bad, it's you're good. The behavior is, I like to say, the behavior is beneath you. No, it's, yeah, because they're right. They're going to say something like, well, so-and-so does it. Maybe yes, maybe no. That's not, maybe the behavior isn't innately bad. But you know what? That's not you. That's I always tell my kids, that's for the other kids down the block. And they want to know who those kids are, by the way. They think it's a bunch of monkeys down there. But it's like, nah, dude, we don't do this. That's not for you. Not for you. It's not you. It's not. That's, almost like it's, remind yourself who you are. One of those things. And again, discipline doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out thing. And here's the crux, by the way. After you're done disciplining a child, clean slate, done. Stop. Forgive my own angst with this, because I have to deal with this constantly, of parents who hold grudges against their children. The child is done with the behavior. They've done whatever form of truly punishment. Clean slate. You're done. Certainly don't bring it up again. Certainly don't walk around in a foul mood. All is forgiven. They spilled something, they dropped whatever, they knocked it, whatever it is. I've had enough of you today. Either you say it or you have that mentality. When they're done with the consequence of the behavior, clean slate. It's all over. It's all done. Call it a day. And speaking of consequences, the job of a parent is to teach your child to be independent. To teach them to walk, metaphorically and literally, and to teach them to walk away. Meaning that you want to instill the meter of being responsible. Therefore, the child knocks something over, the child breaks something, the child does something. Whatever it is secondary to teaching that child to take responsibility for it. Child spills something. Okay? So what? By the way, think about, I was talking to my brother about this, think about how many times we as adults knock into things, just over Shabbos, whatever, glass spilled, my fault. I put the glass there, I knocked it over, and my son came in, a little guy, he says, why is it all wet here? I said, you know what? Daddy knocked over the glass. It was, I put it there, it was silly, I was moving something around, couldn't even blame it on anyone, I tried. It was me. And would you want, that's, your spouse, someone calls it, what are you doing? We knock things over, even kids, as careful as they are and as responsible as they may be, they're still going to break stuff. Yes, they can be more careless sometimes than others, but it's irrelevant. They knock something down, they break something, just teach them to be responsible. Okay, this is what happened, let's go ahead and clean it up, let's take care of it. You can address how it got there another point, but that's not the objective, particularly when you're dealing with a child handling a lot of stressors. A little child, 3, 4, 5, any signs of anxiety, whatever. One of the two best things you can do is, first off, when they make a mistake, is don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution. Meaning, they knock something over, that's not the time to tell the child they have to use 2 hands. Not the time to tell the child that they should have been more responsible. Not the time to tell the child that they should have balanced 4 cups at the same time. It's the time to tell the child, okay, what can we do now to move into solution mode? Let's pick up the glass. For that, we're going to need this. And you allow them to do that. The second thing is, particularly with anxious children, modeling is the most effective way to get your child to chill out themselves. Meaning that Erev Shabbos, when you've got a lot going on, and one kid's pulling on you here, one kid asks for this, the doorbell rings, the other kid's in the microwave oven, and you've got all these things, just my house, okay. You've got all these things going on, rather than scream at your children, say, everyone stop, come on, I can't. Do you see mommy's getting ready for Shabbos? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Instead of that, how about, you're all thinking, how does he fit in my home, right? How about telling your child, okay, all of your children around, they're all screaming, they all want time and attention. It's good for you and it's good for them. Stop for a second and talk out loud exactly what makes sense. Okay, right now, we all have to get ready for Shabbos. Mommy has to get this up, we have to do this, you need this. Let's all think, what is the first thing that we need to do that's the most important? Okay, well, there's smoke coming out of the oven. Little Rivka will say, let's wave the smoke alarms so the challah doesn't burn, right? Is this something that you make them part of the process? Is this something that mom needs attention with right now, or do you think we can wait a few minutes? Walk it through, talk it through. This way, as they grow up and they've got a lot going on, rather than simply screaming at everyone around them or walking into a closed room, they'll go ahead and talk it out. And they'll see exactly how to handle stress. It's also great for yourself, by the way. Okay. Yikes. All right, any quick questions on that? Good? Okay. All right, let me just cover a little bit more with anxiety. And I know some other people have some questions, but I'll do my best to wrap it up either now or afterwards. Okay, dealing with an anxious child. The goal is not to eliminate obstacles, it's to help to teach your child to overcome them and to be more resilient. You can always clear a path in front of your child when they're young, but you can't always do that when they get older. So when you're dealing with anxious children, the goal is to help them to deal with the situation as responsibly as possible. Therefore, if you've got, whether it's attachment or abandonment, whatever the thing is, you drop your child off, you don't have to just, if Hashem blessed you with a number of children, some you can drop off and they go and run and play with the trucks. Others you drop off and they jump out. It's like they're holding on to you. That's okay. Stay with them. Give them what they need and then sit with them and allow for them to get more comfortable. But sparing your child, like the first day of school, I always tell parents, it is scary. The first day of school, you're going on this big bus all by yourself. Do your best not to take your child to school. Because what I tell my kids, that everyone on the bus is as scared as you are. And they're all scared, all the first day. And it sort of makes them feel more power knowing they're not the only one. Because if you drive them to school the first day, all you're doing is teaching them that if they're scared about doing something, that it makes them put their exam. Doesn't mean that you're always going to insist that they do what they need to do. It does mean that the reflex can't be to save them from the situation.
Can't there be the day before school that parents go with their kid on the bus one time, like for?
100%, you could certainly do that, but you bring up a good point in terms of what's called the anticipatory effect. If you're dealing with an anxious child, don't let the child know about something coming up, weeks in advance, days in advance. Let it be something that comes up right at the time. The reason is as follows. You're right. You won't get that advantage. You have to know your child in the situation. If they know the first day of school is coming and you're preparing for months, of course you can't spring it on them. But there is what to say for not having your child be consumed about something. So if they have a doctor's appointment, and they don't like a strep or whatever it is, go ahead. Oop, thank you. You may already be a winner. If you do your best to go ahead and to try to make that gap in time as short as possible so the child is not ruminating with the anxiety. A lot of anxiety is self-breeding, meaning we ruminate on it, same thing with us. So the less time we have to sort of let it mature and to chew over, the better off it is. Okay, let me just go ahead in the next just 5 minutes, wrap up and talk a little bit more about the differences and distinctions in terms of personality types. Is there anything, by the way, that wasn't clear, anything you want to be crystallized for you on that? Talk about different personalities, yes,
So
please.
the kid says that, I don't care, patch me, put me in the timeout. So what would be a good thing to say?
Excellent.
What would you?
Right, child says, I don't care, put me in timeout. I would say, you don't care, but I care. I don't want to put you in timeout. I was having fun baking cookies, or I was having fun doing this with you. In other words, okay, fine, you don't care.
Yes, if you were interacting. Let's say he was playing with his toys, and now he's playing with the sibling, and now
Right. So again, just because a child says I don't care doesn't you make something and somebody says, wow, this is delicious. You're like, no. What are you really saying? Yeah. Child says they don't care. I don't. No child wants to be put in timeout. Usually it's anyone that protests too much does care. So I wouldn't believe the child. Well, I mean, what are they doing that is that much more fun there? They're saying it because they don't want to feel like they are vulnerable, like they're helpless, like you're in charge of them. This is a child who... I'm sorry, to answer your very good question is they don't care, say, I do care, and you know what, if, you tell your child this, you've got two jobs, to keep them safe and to make them into a mensch. That's the job of any parent, right? Keep them safe and make them into a mensch. So you tell them, my hands are tied. I tell some of my kids when they're little, so you know what, that is a job to do. My job is to raise you to be a mensch. So I've got to do this because Hashem entrusted me with you. You with me. You with me. Entrusted me with you.
Both directions.
I missed my Shabbos nap, people. So I've got to put you in timeout. So go ahead and go. You'll be done in 10 minutes and you'll come out. But this is what I have to do. You don't have to make a big deal about it. If you don't have to believe
It'd be
it.
okay to say like, the reason why I told you 5 minutes is because Happy loves you, but they see that that doesn't.
Well, no. You don't want to say that because then when it's 10 minutes, you stop loving him.
No, then I have to make it longer.
Right, say no, say.
I have to teach you.
Talk to Tati is putting you in timeout because Tati thinks this will help correct your behavior. If you're telling Tati it doesn't, then tell Tati and people can do it longer. Okay?
Can I interrupt
Yes,
just
of
one
course.
thing? I just like to answer to all the fathers and mothers concerned about timeout. In Ready, Set, Go, we train our parents and the children in a very special method called the Nurtured Heart approach. It was created by Howard Glazer. In the past 7 years, the teachers that did have the concept and the parents that got it did not have to put any child in timeout. And I promise you, we don't screen the children to take just the kids that are not spirited. We have a lot of spirited kids in the building here. But over the past 7 years, since we mastered this method in our building, no one had to go to timeout. So there are other ways to train the children beside timeout. The timeout, what we call it reset, we're teaching the kids to reset for themselves. And basically stop for a second, take a deep breath. The worst punishment you could give a child is to withdraw your attention from him, which was basically taking it out for 3 seconds from the child, and the child is back to where it's supposed to be. But has to work first with giving the right intention and build up the inner wealth and all this kind of stuff like they know together.
It's beautiful. Actually, Howard Glazer, who he does a lot with chinuch, he's also the founder of something called reality therapy, which is absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I'm sorry, thank you for the opportunity. What's that? As a psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Howard Glazer. He writes a lot about family dynamics. Some of it is whatever, but he's a lot of it is very, I think, very sound, psychologically speaking. Yeah, that's true, and I appreciate the opportunity to sort of take a step back. We talk about time out. Before you even get to that, if you can help to teach your child to self-regulate or to recalibrate, that would be the ideal. Same thing with us, by the way. We don't put ourselves in time out. What do? Is the best thing you can do is just to stop. The sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the fight or flight response, is the part of us that gets very anxious and harried, and sometimes we don't think. One of the best things we can do for ourselves, for a child, is just literally to stop, take a deep breath, relax, and just sort of sometimes physically take a step back, or sometimes just stop what you're doing and just recalibrate and see if you can sort of regulate yourself. And then if you can, great. And if not, we have our own timeout. It's called ice cream, or whatever your vice is.
Ages 1 to 5 is timeout thing you're saying, or it's getting older?
I'm sorry, please?
This idea of like going with your child with timeout.
Yeah, no, it can even be older. When you've got a super sensitive child, the problem is this: that child doesn't feel that they are really loved. It is nothing you did wrong. It is a nature that is, on one hand, such a beautiful mila. It has so many positives because they're super sensitive. On the other hand, they're very, very vulnerable to any sort of rejection or to any sort of feeling that they're being overpowered, which is why they could also become oppositional, because they're so sensitive to that. Meaning that it could either be a child at 7, 8, 9, even as the child gets older, the consequence doesn't have to be removing the child from you. It could be, it's to tell the child, your punishment is Tati's gain. We're going to go ahead and, come shopping with me and, come do this. And I know you don't love being lugged around Home Depot, whatever, but at least I'll get your company and it'll be a little bit of punishment for you. Which, by the way, just as an aside, when you've got to take your kids shopping, you've got to do something, it doesn't have to be a screaming, let's go, we've got 2 seconds, put on your shoes, blah, blah, blah. Why not just, you're going to be with your child anyway. Get some bang for your buck. Enjoy it. Say, you know what, mommy needs 1 special helper, 2 special helpers, whatever. But have some fun. Enjoy your child. Do it b'simcha. You have a quick question?
Yes, with the anxious child.
Yeah.
If you're not removing the obstacle from him, but he's not doing it, is it ever okay to force? When do you know to force?
Excellent question. When do you know when to force? After the fact.
He's not getting on the
It's like people give you directions. It's like, when you hit the farmhouse, you went too far. Well, perhaps a milestone before I've gone too far. You're asking a very good question. You don't always know. The truth is, you don't always know, but I can say this. If the child, here's a litmus test. If the child wants to do it and will be happy with themselves afterwards, they just can't get over the hump, then is the opportunity to gently encourage. I don't like the word force, whatever. However, if after the fact they're going to be annoyed or frustrated that they were put in that situation, then there's a reason to take a step back. And again, you don't always know. You don't always know, which is why, when you're dealing with a very anxious child, you always want to empathize, you want to validate without magnifying what it is. Meaning, I can see why you think this is scary. I can see how this is. Let the child know you actually feel it, and then you do the little, sort of cognitive therapy here. Say, okay, let's think about this and talk it out. With anxiety with ourselves or children, talk it out. Let's look at the worst case scenario. What are we afraid of? The child will say, well, maybe I'm going on the bus and we'll be robbed, or the bus will break down. Maybe they saw something, whatever. You don't know, and you can talk about that. And here's, by the way, what I love to do with anxious children. You're scared? No. Is you offer them the most amazing consequence if their fear is validated and comes true. For example, your child is afraid that something, and he's going to go to school, and there's going to be a bomb, or a policeman are going to come, or the bank robber is going to come in. You tell your child, if this, again, it has to be something that's not realistic, if this happens, and then you tell them, I will do, and you put this huge thing on the wish list. Now what are they secretly hoping for? Right, to happen. You've completely just gotten rid of that. Now that's when you're dealing with a child whose fears are magnified. Sometimes they are legitimate. You walk through the child, and you come up with sort of plan Bs. If this happens, we'll go ahead and do this. But the best thing you could do, again, is have the conversation, never dismiss their feelings. Then they're not going to want to talk to you about it again. Always empathize, validate. If you can, sort of, when they do this, catastrophize in the worst case scenario, go ahead and offer them some sort of great incentive, and then let them, if that's not the case, let them talk it out, talk it through, and see if you can come up with something that allows them to move forward more confidently. Okay, let me just end with just refocusing on dealing with different temperaments with the children. So again, just to recap and to crystallize, if you have a child who has a certain temperament, let's say you're a very easygoing person, and you've got a child who's very rigid, very, let's say even perfectionist. And by the way, I rarely find a child who becomes a perfectionist that didn't have one parent who was also a perfectionist. No pointing out at everyone here. See people go, yeah, right? Perfectionist. That's the ladies, not you guys, trust me. It's actually not gender specific. But you would do well, by the way, is recognizing that, because if you are one of those high achiever perfectionists, and you have a child who is, and you could tell, by the way, the child that's not going to be the perfectionist, they're the ones that leave the caps off of everything. The child that leaves the clothes on the floor. The child that opens things up and leaves the wrappers on the floor. Impulse control and perfectionism do not go together. So that child you don't have to worry about. At the same time, you may be like, how the hamper's here and the clothes are on the floor here. How hard is it just to do this? Just to do this. This. You're thinking, that's my husband, right? It is a personality, and if you have a hard time with it, then I encourage you, accept and love your child. Accept by the fact your own stuff, and the degree to which you can really own your stuff and accept who you are is the beginning of growth, by the way. Because if you refuse to accept who you are, you'll never move forward. You put into a GPS, you want to go to Muncie. What's the first thing the GPS has to calculate? Where you are now. So the beginning of growth are